Hey, it's Dave Brown here, host of Now with Dave Brown on AMI. Check out this latest highlight from the show. More details of the Canada Disability Benefit were announced as part of the federal budget a few weeks ago. The headline number, $200 a month maximum. It has underwhelmed and disappointed many people with disabilities and other organizations that represent them. Rabia Khedr is the National Director of Disability Without Poverty. Hey, good morning, Rabia. Nice to chat with you today.
Hey, good morning, Dave.
Rabia, I don't mean to even have that playful laugh in my voice, but the number is just so preposterous that it still makes me laugh every single time. But what was your initial reaction to the announcement in the budget?
Well, you're rightfully laughing, Dave. It was a joke. It was awful. It was very disappointing. I was invited to the the pre-budget presentation before it was released to the public on April 16th. So I was there a couple of years ahead of, a couple of years, oh my God, a couple of hours ahead of that with a number of other individuals from the disability community, representing organizations and whatnot. And we all gasped when we saw the final number. We were expecting a little better. We weren't expecting perfect, but we were expecting a decent start, and this was a disappointment to say the least. People were outraged and continue to be outraged. It's just unfair because our expectations were raised throughout this journey. We saw the spirit of unanimous consent by parliamentarians, regardless of their political colors or stripes. Everyone came together saying that people with disabilities who live in poverty deserve a Canada Disability Benefit that lifts them out of poverty, that alleviates poverty. $200 a month maximum does not alleviate poverty for anybody today.
Rabia, the number is certainly the element that captured a lot of people's attention, but there were some other shortfalls. I think still a lack of clarity around eligibility was a big one. In your mind, what are some of the other shortfalls of the announcement?
Well, again, we predicted this, but we advocated for better. It is, the benefit is tied to the disability tax credit. The disability tax credit has been historically flawed. There have been recommendations made to improve it that have yet to be incorporated. We know that very few people actually qualify or access the disability tax credit. And in fact, there's a whole process around it, and there's some ambiguity around the process because government did include some funds for the medical community, for physicians to complete these forms, and it's still unclear how that's going to play out. And we know that in this country, there are thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people without a medical doctor.
It's one of the words that I think about in regards to that process is onerous. As you point out, it's not just the act of filling out what can be something of a complex form. It's actually finding a physician who can do that for you, right? So when you think about the flaw with the number, it ends up dovetailing into the flaw of the process.
Absolutely. The process is flawed. The number is flawed. It's not it's checking the box on the law, but it's not meeting the intent of what the Canada Disability Act was expected to achieve. So we are pushing hard now, advocating for bettering the benefit. We need this benefit improved. We need this benefit increased, and we need eligibility criteria expanded and made more accessible. We are meeting with provinces, by the way, Dave, and we've had some great signals out of British Columbia, for example, in terms of their willingness to engage with the federal government for automatic enrollment. So people who receive provincial disability benefits in BC should automatically qualify for the Canada disability benefit through being enrolled automatically into the disability tax credit. And those that the federal government already has screened for the disability tax credit in the spirit of reciprocity will be automatically deemed eligible if they live in British Columbia and otherwise qualify. They won't have to do the whole rigorous process of proving their disability.
So
And we're hoping that this is something that other provinces will come on board with. And Manitoba, for example, has definitely stated that they will not claw back this $200. Mind you, there's not much to claw back,
right.
although you never know.
Yeah, but that's it. You never know when you start dealing with the wranglings of provinces. So, Rabia, the way that I understand that is even though there is still discontent, there are still some encouraging signs here in engagement with the provinces. It appears the target date for the benefit to start getting paid out will be next summer. What do you imagine the next 12 months look like in regards to advocacy, consultation, implementation?
Again, Dave, what we need to recognize is one, this is historic. Like, we actually do have a benefit in legislation and a benefit in a budget. We may disagree with the amount and all the details of it, but hey, it is done. We have checked the box, but it's historic. It's a historic check mark. A lot of work is ahead with the regs. The input on the regulations is critical. We hear from the government that the pre-regulations will be put out for consultation shortly. The legislation is supposed to come into force on June 22nd, if not any sooner. And that triggers the 12-month clock on completing the regulatory process. So government wants really good input from community, and we will be working hard to ensure that people with disabilities across this country have the opportunity to express their views and incorporate their voice into the regulatory process. We need to make sure that our hands are not tied through regulations in this nominal amount and eligibility criteria and whatnot. So we will work hard to make sure that our principles, we have 7 principles that we've articulated through our disability with possibility report in our Shape the CDB consultation process that we undertook. We want to make sure that those principles are robustly reflected in the regulations. So we will be working hard with our community partners, with people with lived experience, to do this. And I got to tell you, though, Dave, I need to comment on this. It's been rough because people who are not happy with this benefit are outraged, and they're expressing their outrage at government, but they're also expressing it at those of us that have worked really hard to make sure that this the promise that the Prime Minister made actually became legislation, and that there's an actual budget. We are not responsible for the amount. We never agreed to the amount. We never even stated an amount as disability without poverty, because we didn't want people in the system to get stuck with a number. And we wanted to get the most we can out of government. So it's been rough for all of us that have faced a lot of harsh criticism for, you know, basically, I mean, in the past, we've been accused of being astroturfers, and we're far from it. DWP is actually funded privately by philanthropic foundations that support disability rights. We don't take any money from government. So we are not involved in doing the government's work, for example.
Rabia, there's probably a bit of a takeaway there as well, that the political process can be discouraging at times, but it's fluid and ongoing. And just because you're perhaps discouraged or maybe even enraged by a piece of policy, that piece of policy is not set in cement, and it's a reminder about ongoing work and ongoing engagement in the political process.
Yes, absolutely.
Rabia, let's wrap up here on something a little bit more optimistic. The 3rd Annual Canadian Congress on Disability Inclusion is happening today. The Congress kickstarts National Accessibility Week. What are your thoughts on the significance of the Congress that kicks off today?
Well, it's a platform that, was established virtually to bring experts, people with lived experience, professionals, anyone and everyone who wants to share and learn more about making Canada accessible through this Congress. And what's significant is we're having conversations about, the Accessible Canada Act marks 5 years now.
Wow.
Since its implementation. And there are standards underway, and we are supposed to be, barrier-free, like Ontario said, barrier-free by 2025, and we're supposed to be barrier-free nationally by 2040. So the standards are being developed and rolled out, and hopefully we see some positive changes, although we know that we still experience a lot of barriers to employment, to transportation, et cetera, et cetera.
Rabia, when you say it's been 5 years since the ACA, I knew it, but every time I hear that number stated out loud, it always sort of shocks me. That where did 5 years go?
Oh, well, yeah, they went.
Yeah,
what did we see? Not much.
It's a constant.
Did your life change, Dave?
I think some things changed for me between 2019 and 2024, but I don't know how much about the ACA, but it's a reminder that time is linear.
Exactly. And, with all due respect, with accessibility legislation provincially and federally, the pandemic put a monkey in all of that, and we saw a lot more barriers constructed for some of us, right? Like those plexiglass screens at customer service counters.
Oh my gosh, I'm still getting used to those, the ones that are still hanging around, the human-to-human contact and whatnot.
Yeah.
Hey, Rabia, I know you're in Ottawa today. You took some time away from what's going to be a very busy day for you. Thank you for this. Thank you for sharing your reaction, and talk to you again in a couple weeks.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. Bye-bye.
That's Rabia Khedr, National Director of Disability Without Poverty. The Canadian Congress on Disability Inclusion is happening today. It's not too late to learn a little bit more. Head over to Canada.ca, www.canada.ca, to possibly register and get engaged and find out about events that are happening all across the country over the course of the next 7 days. Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI TV, or download the podcast wherever you listen.